start. Thank you very much. If anyone has a question about the lake, Wardstone, we're lucky to have here for his input. So if anyone has a question, please go forward.
Yes.
Do you have a way we can get in touch with you? Webpage, telephone, any of that sort of thing? So
Yes.
we can keep in touch after this.
Yeah, we'll do that afterwards.
And I want to. I definitely want to.
So how do we get in touch?
I think that this is such a big meeting today
We'll give you the
with
information
what has going on,
You talk about
that there's no place, whether it's on the east side of the Hudson or the west side of the Hudson, the Adirondacks or the Catskills, where DEC can do the kind of a check of the resources, which usually is somebody with a master's or a PhD, takes and roams around for a couple hours and writes up that such and such is observed. And then they say, yeah, that's fairly typical to have white-tailed deer and this kind of thing in that spot. And it means almost nothing, except they've got the paperwork filed. And then they go on towards it. But that is such a beautiful lake, and such a beautiful area around it. It shouldn't be developed there. And what I'm saying is go after DEC on the species that are there. And when you go after them, and I mentioned this during my talk, Onteora Lake and Bluestone are just not there on whatever day that they normally would choose to take a look at. It's 365 days a year. So what's there on October 15th may be very different from what's there on February 15th. So they should be, for example, warblers are in trouble now, and warblers would use habitat like that in their migration, and undoubtedly some nesting. Push them so that they have to come up with the species that are actually there. Mostly they can't do it, but they've got young people that are biologists newly in with the group that can go out and learn to identify a lot of species that are there. We just don't do it.
Is that going to be part of the seeker, or what can we expect from the seeker and this migrational season, 12 months out of the year?
Manager Joe Green and I have seen this a lot of times. They go with seeker, they hire somebody, and they come from a reputable firm, what's considered a reputable firm, and they walk around and they do a survey of what's there on the day that they are going. It's not set up that they go there in the springtime, in the summertime, and early in the fall, in the heart of winter, and back into the spring again. They don't. It's not that kind of thing. That would cost a lot of money.
Do you think they would consider it if somebody did that?
Can I add to this, to what Dr. Stone said? I've seen projects, bad development projects, killed in the Hudson Valley. But unfortunately, it takes this grassroots effort to raise the funds to hire a specialist. Hudsonia is often Spider Barber. These are folks who have helped prevent really bad projects. And they have good technique. But it takes, unfortunately, we clearly can't rely on the DEC. But I think that there are people that, and an example is the lake down where the dam is. Where they're trying to take out a dam that needs to actually stay. And it's down. I think it's called Tilson Lake. It's not in Tilson.
I think so.
And that community has organized. They've hired the best lawyers and the best available. We didn't have Ward immediately available, but they hired Hudsonia, and they really put the brakes on that project. They convinced Senator Metzger and Congressman Delgado, and they also hired people to do a financial analysis. So this is just one example. But over the years, the pattern is that unfortunately it falls to the community groups to figure out how to hire experts. And if we can do that, because the secret project process, that will be led by the lead agency, which is an unsympathetic community. At least the existing elected officials are not sympathetic, but they do have a lawyer who knew that they were going to be sued with an Article 78 for being arbitrary and capricious if they proceeded with what they had started. So there's a step backwards, and a deeper environmental assessment needs to be done, but somebody is going to have to figure out, how to pay for the experts to do it. Thank you for...
I'm a trained DEC technician. I actually have the background to do a dendrological analysis, an aquatic analysis, a geological analysis, and ecological analysis.
Well, we're going to keep you really busy now. Bonnie, did you have a comment about the lake?
Well, just if we get all of these things done, does the DEC, or will they even consider it in the seeker? Will it be legitimately taken into consideration? Or is it the money that's going to win in the end?
It is not easy to answer that question. In general, they're resilient. They are able to take critical information and what they guarantee beforehand the industry that they're going to get their permits. You have the job of stopping that. And I gave you some information this morning which should be in that direction. DEC is not prepared to look at the birds. They're not prepared to answer those questions. And you've got the science papers, you've got good scientists saying 3 billion birds are missing from North America since 1970. The warblers are one of the things that you would expect to come through there, and some of the warblers to nest there. They should be looked for. Now, they don't come through there on April 15th. They come before that. And they come before that back through the woods, the ones that are migrating. Other ones actually nest there. So you've got to really put in a lot of time, more time than government thinks has prescribed for it to be done.
Can we demand that this happens if it's left out of
Well,
the
I would say that would be a good thing to do, demand that it be done, and done everywhere, for every kind of subject. We are 3 billion birds down. Billion!
I bet we're a bit more than that.
Well, I told you stories about, we look back when we were kids. You remember the robins that were all over the lawns?
Yeah.
There were lots and lots of birds on our lawns. They're not there anymore.
You're right. We didn't have Roundup then.
We poisoned them. And we poisoned out their food.
That's what we're doing. We're starving out all the animals.
So when Mother Robin goes to get
And they will starve us out.
some earthworms, and we're heading for that. And so you can go to the governor and actually ask him to strengthen it. But in this case, you want to do something about Onteora. And that place does mean something to me because I've been there. And I also went to the high school and I spoke to an assembly there.
Onteora?
Yeah.
Part of their application material, I would say 90% of the bulk of the information that Orange has submitted to the lead agency is this huge black book, and it's the stormwater plan, the runoff plan. And I think that's the biggest issue. That's the 2 water permits that they're requesting from DEC. And their engineer, on their presentation in June, blatantly said their plan for the runoff is that what they can't contain in their 2 ponds, it's going to run under a culvert, under Route 28, go into Premier Brook, which runs through the whole diagonal length of the town of Early,
Right.
and into the Esopus Creek.
Well, that's why it's important to know what's in the fish beforehand so that you can measure things that are picked up when they put more material out that goes into the stream. And I would have my doubts that they've got any data.
What do we do to get the data?
Well, you request it, but I don't think there's going to be little to no data that they're going to provide. So in other words, that tells you right off the bat they're going to making a lot of decisions in a vacuum.
Okay, so we could demand from the seeker that this data is, we have a baseline data on this fish.
So we sue them.
Well, you don't have to demand. You demand that they already have the data, not necessarily seeker. What have you got now? What do you plan? There are other ways of gathering data besides under seeker.
Well, the Esopus Creek is stocked by DEC with fish on an annual basis. So it's like rainbows, brooks, browns, and so on.
That's west of the plant.
But they do that in many streams across the state, and they don't know what's in there. And they don't know what the fish are picking up.
Marie had her hand up, and this lady, and then you. I'm keeping track of the stack.
Okay. And I'm after him.
Well, I think he pretty much answered my question. My question is, can we force the developer to do better studies? But it doesn't sound like we can, right? You're saying that citizens groups would have to raise the funds to have, the most knowledgeable scientists conduct these studies.
Well, first I would try to go with the government.
Okay.
And raise hell with the governor and
With the governor.
commissioners. Yeah, well, the governor, because he might do something for Onteora Lake. There's big talk about the making money in tourism and lakes and Catskills.
Yeah.
But be ready to raise the money to do some checking. You may not be able to do a full-scale study on toxics, but you might be able to do a couple of things. We might be able to look in a couple of places.
Maybe we could even, you're talking about what's in the fish? I mean, maybe
We're
we could
talking
even
about
enlist
something
the
that is
help of-
important to the whole Catskills,
Yeah.
the whole state.
Right.
So if we don't get around to looking at the environment in a much more critical way from the point of view of protecting the environment, right now much of what is being done is protective of industry.
Right.
They took 2 generations before they started taking the PCBs out of the Hudson.
Yeah.
And I did more than talk about them. I was the one who found them
Yeah.
and talked counter. Well, they had attorneys talking. GE attorneys, DEC attorneys. It took 2 generations, about 50 years before they started cleaning up the PCBs. By that time, so much of the PCBs had gone elsewhere, into the atmosphere and come down with rain and snow and dust, and they went down and filled in lower areas of the Hudson and the Atlantic Ocean.
There's people living
I
there
learned a
now,
lot
too.
because, yeah, I have all the degrees and that kind of thing, and you're being told by people who have little to no training in science, mostly no training in science, what should be done. And of course, they are closely affiliated with the people that make profits. Now, what I said this morning when I was talking there was that on the Hudson, we should be looking at all of the pollutants within the Hudson River and the tributaries coming in, not just on PCBs. There's nothing wrong with taking hot spots of PCBs and cleaning them up. We would expect that to be done. But we want to know what else is in there. We don't want to hear about PCBs doing this and that and then just have it switch to ABCs a decade later and XYZs a few years after that.
Yes, and
Right. And that's the kind of thing that they want to do. That's in orderly fashion.
this
And
lady had her hand up, and then this gentleman, and then you.
Go ahead.
We sort of got, well, this would fit in. Whatever happens worldwide affects us. And if we don't have population control, we have nothing.
Nature will control.
what happens at Onteora is a microcosm of the world.
Yeah.
So you want to think from that point of view, and you want to think widely that changes that you make there might be able to be applied to all the Catskills, all of New York, all of the Northeast,
So on.
the U.S., worldwide.
Yes.
That's where we are.
Okay. Part of my litigation was against New York State, and I did tremendous amounts of research There are literally millions of miles of roadways in this country, millions of miles. Each roadway generates about 20 large plastic bags of trash annually. They get the runoff from farms, industry, raw sewage, and so forth. And every bit of it, every single bit of it winds up in rivers and streams, ultimately to the oceans. And by the time it gets to the oceans, it becomes homogenized and it's impossible to remove. So when you walk out of this building today, just look down on the highways and the roadways, it all goes into rivers and streams. Some of it is hooked up illegally. I mean, and so that's what you're going to find in your lake. You're going to find all kinds of things that washes off our streets, illegally, legally, or any way you want to, and they're not going to fix it.
We
They will not
promised
fix it.
we were going to focus on Onteora Lake, so can we, moving forward, stick to that topic?
Inundating people might be my question. Why is not New York City not interested? It's close to the reservoir. It might affect the water quality. Why can't they pay for the study to make sure it doesn't, affect New York City water quality? Why wouldn't they be interested?
It's not close
It would
enough.
if I may,
Go ahead.
I just want to say, it would take an organized meeting with them, with community members, and as busy as I am, I would say that Clearwater would go with you. We've met with the DEP before on other topics. They make up their own mind. They're not often influenced by us, but it's not enough to say why doesn't. You have to confront them. You have to set up a meeting, organize a group of people to go, and bring as much credible people that have experience with you. But I want to, I jumped on that, and you asked Ward the question, so please.
Yeah, but isn't there some kind of some kind of law that states if you present, we have this PhD guy who is going to observe for 1 full year, daily for 1 full year, the bird migrations and so on, that they have, and you present it and apply, like make an application, there should be, I think there's some kind of law, I don't know if it's New York State or federal, that they have to listen to you. They have to take it if you go about it.
Unfortunately, there isn't. Now, maybe when women play a larger role in what happens in the environment, which I think is going to happen. Got people coming along like my daughter, Montana. They seem to have more insight in the need to have an earth that we can live in happily and our children can live in.
Yeah.
But what you have to do, I think, you have to make DEC carry out as much program as you can get them to force the company to do.
I see.
That way, you can take a look at that, and then you can decide where to plunk your money.
Right.
But and what I was doing this morning was saying that science is on your side. Those articles that just came out, they came out in the journal Science. And that one that talked about the billions of birds down in population, that's in the journal Science.
A 53% decline in sparrows, warblers, blackbirds, finches, grassland species, and 36% decline.
I never see bluebirds anymore.
Yeah, well, that's a start. We're going to get a lot worse on the climate change, and we're talking about atomic warfare with other countries, other dumb things that are going to make the environment bad. We're at the point now where we need to make the change to take care of the earth. We all are dependent upon that earth. And I agree with you, there should be laws already there, but they would have to do it. They're not going to. Those laws, a lot of them, they got cleared by industry. And so they're not going to look at some of those chemicals because they want to use those chemicals.
I know.
And they don't want to have to clean things up. They want to be able to ignore it. As long as you don't have laws and you don't have people looking, you don't have them finding data. Now, similarly, they don't really want to have to spend more time finding endangered species. Now, what do we know? What the heck are endangered species? Those are species that are about to go extinct. No more existence on the earth. And since the meteor hitting the earth and putting up the dust that got rid of all the dinosaurs, we probably haven't been in such a big problem that we have right now. The earth is really threatened by environment, by climate change. And Onteora Lake, the concrete company, one of the things that I noticed was they're going to have trucks going in there. The trucks will drip fluid from them, brake fluid,
a day.
motor fluid, and so on.
100 trucks a day.
Right.
24 hours a day.
Right now, of course, if they do better, they may have sell more concrete. But are the forms lined with something? What chemicals do they actually use there? And then that material runs down and is caught in a couple of traps, which are cement pits, lined pits apparently. Cement lined pits?
10 millimeter thick rubber.
What's under the plastic?
And they're supposed to be inspected once a week.
Yeah.
But they're not built for 100-year storms because the berms that they have in the swales are not adequate for that kind of control.
Well, that's one of the things we really got to be up on, is that we're going to have those 100-year storms.
Yeah. Every 5 years.
And once they're
And I talked about the turkey poults being down.
And I would just like to, go ahead about the turkeys. I just
Well,
want to
the
summarize
turkeys
what
are
you're
in
saying.
trouble because of the torrential downpours that we're getting over a wide geographic area. So you have torrential downpours there, and you have a lot of flow into that holding area.
Well, Houston just had a 30-inch rainfall. What happened there? They got 5 killed because of Imelda. That's an example of what's called stuck weather, which is a climate change-generated storm. We're going to have the same thing again. We're going to have another Irene under Sandy. It's only a question of percentages.
Yeah.
Maybe next year, maybe this fall. You don't know when.
It's not after tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, they have the bog turtle at the lake, and the bog turtle is like, 1,500 feet away from the plants? It's like a quarter of a mile. And they say, oh no, the bog turtle's too far away to be affected by this plant. But I think a quarter
They
of a mile
come up
is
with
pretty
all
close.
kinds of excuses. You don't find a whole lot of biologists that are courageous because their career depends upon following policy. And you aren't going to be advanced by being a rebel in the cause. Now, I was fortunate that I was a pathologist.
We don't know how you survived for 40 years.
So I was able to survive no matter how much threat they put against me because I had the science and I had the degrees. In fact, it was because of the degrees that I knew that they were full of it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I looked at GE, first of all, we gave them permits to put the PCBs into the river.
Right.
In the very beginning, they actually had a permit to do that. The federal government also gave them permits to do that. DEC approved taking a dam out of the river up in Hudson Falls area and let all kinds of PCBs go down the river that were attached to the sediments behind that dam. And they took the engineer who did that and they advanced him to regional director in Raybrook. He certainly followed the rules. When I went up with the Mohawks, I didn't follow the rules except the rules of science. They were polluting the heck out of the river. They had DEC people who were assigned to be in charge of monitoring pipes that went into the river.
Yesterday, they gave Sagos, the commissioner of DEC, an award for the 50th anniversary of the Catskill Center for all the great work he's done for the Catskills. What is it, basin
Well,
center?
there's awards for all kinds of things. They're not hard to come by. And awards are very likely to be given to people in power. I'm sure that how many awards does the president get?
So I'm Jem, I'm on the, I hope you come to our next meeting. We meet on Wednesdays from 5:30 to 8 at the Tibetan Center on Route 28, which is right across the street from Onteora Lake. and we're brainstorming on how to move forward with this. So if you are seriously a serious-minded person ready to get out and pound the pavement, we have people who live in the town of Kingston, which is where this is happening, and there's only 800 people in that town. So some of the residents are canvassing people in their area on foot, going door to door. And we need people who have good minds, who are willing to, maybe even, we do email, we have a Facebook page, but if you could sign your name here, show up on Wednesday, or give us your email or phone number if you can be part of the solution, because it's going to be a long haul. We don't even know if there's going to be a seeker process because we don't know that yet. And we have to raise money to hire lawyers and experts, and we need experts.
Well,
so if you know people who are experts...
declaration rescinded.
I'm sorry?
It is going to be a secret process. The negative declaration was rescinded. So part of the application for the water permits are to go forward with a seeker. So that's up for another discussion.
Okay, we've been told that it's not a given. So we're waiting now. We're waiting to see what's going to happen. We're like in this holding pattern. But if you can come, it's just Save Onteora Lake. We're on Facebook. And the Catskill Mountain Keepers come to the meeting. Woodstock Land Conservancy comes to the meeting. So the Sierra Club comes to the meeting.
We're aware of the meeting. If you leave your paper,
some people are not aware of the meeting, so I'm talking to those people, but thank you. So if you could just show up on Wednesday, you can get up to speed on what's actually being done, so you know that there's a lot of people out there who are... I appreciate you wouldn't cut me off. I didn't do
Well,
that.
I would say raise as much hell as you
I'm going to leave
can.
it with Tony because it's
I don't leave it with
quarter after.
Just pass
We
it
also
around.
have two bats. We have two bats that migrate up from Williams Lake. They migrate up to roost and they migrate back down. No, not the brown bat. It's the long-eared
Indiana.
and the Indiana. And they're a threatened species also.
That's where you're going to get your money to do these studies, is New York City. You ought to be slamming it deep.
No, they're not part of it.
But it's close to the reservoir. It could contaminate
Yeah,
the
we're
waters.
going to follow through with that.
Are you willing to organize a meeting to meet with the right people at DEP?
I used to teach school 30-something years ago at Aquasas, and it's worse than what you know about the Alcoa Reynolds people. The babies, human babies, were born prematurely.
She's talking. To explain
No, I don't want to talk to them.
what a scoping process is.
The cows,
Because
after
if you
2
don't
years,
understand anything
couldn't
about
stand
secret,
anymore. Their
and I am
bones were
quite
so weak.
convinced they are going to have to,
Horrible,
because they've
horrible
rescinded the
things.
neg
And I think they finally
they are
done something
going
about
to
it,
have
but
to go
it's
through
very
the
polluted.
Well, the thing is,
Excuse me, Benita. We need to focus on water. So can we go forward with the question?
My request is that you help people.
Can one person speak at a time and address it to Ward? He's here today to answer questions, but there's like 3
We are.
conversations.
You
Three
remember.
conversations. Just one conversation at a time.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Could you please help people understand the scoping process? Because that is what they're going to be facing next under seeker.
Thank you.
Well, when they scope this all out, what usually happens is that they quickly looking at the species around there in the write-up, and pretty soon you see that the company has a permit to operate. So if you want that to stop, you raise as much ruckus as you can politically, and you've got a perfect time right now because of those scientific papers that I talked about, because that indicates that there are more endangered species, we've got more habitat stress, we've got the climate change. So DEC's ordinary way of scoping and looking at endangered species and chemicals is passé. It needs a whole new way of looking at these things. And that is not just for Onteora Lake. and Bluestone area and so on. It's for everywhere. And the whole Catskills. And you think about the whole Catskills from the point of view of birds. And you think about what they're going to do. The same kind of thing that they're developing at Onteora Lake, they'll develop companies at the opposite end of the Catskills. Down in Sullivan County. Other places, including along the Hudson River. So now's the time to get them to make an overhaul of the whole thing. Have not those kids on a worldwide basis told us that it's time to look at things in a different way? It is. And of course, we had that on the Hudson with Clearwater. We had a new way of looking at the Hudson River with Clearwater. And I went out with Seeger on the Hudson River and looked at the PCBs. Seeger and I in a small boat looking at the PCBs. I showed him what they smelled like. And we opened up a lot of changes. There have been a lot of positive things.
As an oil
and the
smell.
piece by Clearwater, and people like them, particularly Clearwater on the Hudson, had so much to do with the PCB. So down here, you have a meeting, go get them. Show the politicians that there's a lot of people that care, and broaden it out right now with the indications that you need to look at a lot of things because the scientific papers are out there in science.
I have a question. I did a preliminary hydrogeological statement about the very real possibility of people running out of water because of the blasting and the drilling of new water down there. It's a real serious problem for residents on the lake and also on the residents because of the fact that the drawdown will be severe. 2,000 gallons of water a day, 24 hours a day for 18 months. That's a considerable drawdown, and it will not be replenished because of the lack of snow melt in the spring. We don't have that charge anymore. What's your opinion about the water issue regarding amounts of water that are going to be drawn down by the drilling and by the blasting? The blasting has an effect on wellheads.
Well, you'd be better off to have a hydrogeologist who was skilled at that to answer that question. You need the real science, and a wildlife pathologist is not the person to ask about that. You would ask a hydrogeologist. So part of the legal action, make DEC provide answer to your question. And when they can't do it, then they have to hire a hydrogeologist as part of the scoping process to answer that. There's a lot of water questions there. One is the rainfall, the climate change. How well are those ponds that are holding material runoff from the 100 trucks, dust and so on from the concrete conduits? How is all that material going to be held up in those ponds, and what happens when you have a torrential downpour and those ponds fail? In order to do that, you need to have what is in the background.
Hey, Paul Rubin. Write that down, Paul Rubin. He's a hydrogeologist.
Paul Rubin is a friend of mine. I know him well. He does well.
He does good work.
And he cares about the environment.
Yes, he does.
Paul Rubin used to be a hydrogeologist for the Attorney General.
I want to say one more thing about scoping, and that is, I think there's enough knowledge.
Can you please stop interrupting? Thank you.
She's just getting the
It's
sign
continuous. It needs to stop.
So
I'm trying to understand what she's saying.
I'll fill it out. I would like to suggest that we have here in the community enough knowledge about hydrogeology to develop questions that they have to include when they do the scoping session. They're saying what studies need to be done, what information needs to be demonstrated, and whether I agree with the secret process or not, that's what we got to work with. where I see a gap once Ward goes back, I know he's willing to help, but is on the ecological. And, you know, I think we need to find some help. And again, the people that I've learned to trust over the years are Hudsonia and Spider Barber. But whether or not they'll be available or willing to help. But right now what you have to do is create a list of issues and questions so that once the secret process starts, you'll already be ready to answer that. I think that you'll get a lot of help from Catskill Mountain Keeper and Woodstock Land Trust. Those folks have been around this block a while. But I just wanted you to understand what your next step is. And I completely agree with the woman who suggested a meeting with DEP. I absolutely think it's their responsibility to get involved. And if somebody else will pull together a meeting, and if you need to know some of the people, I'm quite sure Ira Stern might be one of the right people to reach out to. How far they're willing to go with this, I don't know yet. I can't take it on full time, but I can offer, you know, point you in the right direction.
The Food and Water Watch, the headquarters, is in Brooklyn, and the Audubon in Manhattan. We got together and we helped stop fracking in New York, and that's why I'm up here now. Right.
Especially if the water supply could be compromised, even just through the rattling of the rocks, even if it is.
Well, what it does is basically it rearranges the porosity, permeability, flow rate, and complete water recharge of the reservoir right there, the aquifer. That's what magnetic blasting does. The literature's in there.
Yeah, but the problem is the reservoir is very heavily enforced.
Yeah, that's right.
Based for the reservoir, so I think DEP is just going to blink their eyes and that's it.
Yeah, but it's so close.
That's
right.
right.
They control everything you do.
You can point out to DEC and the government that the seeker process needs to be revamped and modernized so that it's meaningful, because a lot of it is not very meaningful. And we pretty well know that in most cases, industry is going to win out.
Ward, where do you get a copy of a secret form?
We have a copy.
What we have to do is parse it all out.
No, it's just on the internet.
I've been so disappointed in myself and in actual cases when people went out and filled out the form about resources in the site, what they found. And even I once found ravens were nesting in a particular site that was going to be developed. And I photographed it and all, and by golly, they had a seeker coming up, and the raven's nest disappeared. Wow. There was no raven's nest there anymore. Wow. Somebody came in and cleaned it out.
End of issue. Dated pictures.
We need to strengthen that whole process.
Well, the Breeding Bird Atlas Project in New York State, which I was a part of for many years, is part of an inventory of bird populations in New York State. I think we should contact the people who conduct that and possibly have them do a preliminary survey of the breeding bird nest sites of the resident and the migratory species in that.
Well,
in that
they
forest.
aren't going to do anything that's not approved at a higher level. They're not going to produce data that's going to be not supporting the overall DEC view of whatever that project is. Now's the time to attack, though, because all these things are saying that the bird populations are down.
So
and it's pretty darn good data.
Yeah, okay.
And to mention Cornell University involved in that kind of data is good, because Cornell is responsible for a lot of the problems that have occurred by recommending application of various poisons.
Well, the nicotinoids are killing off a lot of them. They're the way they're treating seeds with that. And
well, we are so stupid in dealing with that, the nicotinamides, yes, and what they did to bees.
Yeah.
My daughter went to Croatia. The mother is part Croatian, and she decided she'd go to Croatia. So when she went over to Europe, she went to usual places like Italy and so on, but she went to Croatia. Well, lo and behold, Croatia was crawling with bees, honeybees. And of course, my daughter is scientifically trained, and she was interested in the bees. And the Croatians said, "Oh yes, we followed France." And the French had done the research that showed the neonicotinoids were killing off the bees. So the Croatian government had moved apparently in the direction of banning that. And they had lots of bees back in Croatia. And so, we need to see that. Cornell, kept right on going. They used to have
Didn't Cornell know that they affects the bird's ability to migrate? A recent paper showed that birds who are eating seeds treated with the nicotinoids.
Well, Cornell is a very interesting place. I had a real problem, like with my daughter, when she got accepted there. She said, "Well, that's an Ivy League problem. You went to Syracuse, good school, but not Ivy League." And I, as a father, you say, "Well, my daughter's got into a really good school." But Cornell is a very interesting place. A tremendously intellects in a lot of the professors. But some of the worst decisions ever made are made for industry, agricultural industry, on the applications of poisons.
Funded by Monsanto.
And the professors are paid pretty handsomely. I used to testify quite often. I would say, "Well, professor, next time go back and do some homework on the subject," after they would lose out on a hearing that I'd be testifying in. Of course, I had good stuff. I had actually dead birds. But, they would have people come into my lab and they would say things like, "Look at the dinky little state lab you've got. How can you expect that you're going to beat us? How are you going to beat Steve Gaggi?" And I said, "Because I'm Ward Stone and you're not. And I've got the data and I can fight." So now I'm an old man and I can't walk very much, but I still can fight. I still can think. So basically what I'm saying is that when you continue the battle on Onteora, I'll be there providing my experience and knowledge, and I study every day.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Concerning Onteora Lake, we're talking a lot about the wildlife and stuff, but it's been designated like a park for fishing and for people to go swimming. And so people are actually, going there recreationally. Is there any more clout to that? We're concerned about the wildlife, but concerned about people. And does that give us any more legal?
You would think so. You would think you get to the health department and say, pose that question to them. It doesn't work. It does not work very well. No, they don't make any special look. But you can raise those questions and you can cause them at least to consider them and know that those questions are out there. But they need to improve the health department a great deal. What kind of a department is going to be out there when they know that we've got drinking water all over the state of New York that's got various chemical contaminants in it that we're not identifying?
Like up in Hoosick Falls.
Like Hoosick Falls. The problem you got at Hoosick Falls is knowing what else is in there. What came along with those PFOAs? What other chemicals there? The same kind of thing you've got in the Hudson River. We worked very hard on getting them recognized that we had a PCB problem and doing something about that. But what are we missing? What other pollutants are we missing that are just as bad or even worse?
And how long have they been in there? Been there for a long time.
And another thing you have to also take into account, the geology of the site is very, very crucial to the effect of the chemicals that are in the water. So if you have a geology which is very acidic versus a geology which is very, very alkaline, there's a buffering effect has a great deal to do with it. So we're in an area which has a lot of acidic geology. So what's going to happen is that basically it's going to be affected by the pollutants that go in there. So you got to be very crucial when you analyze all those factors. So
I noticed towns in this generation are a lot slower or do not want their grounds to be declared a Superfund site, like Pittsfield, like Port Ewan here.
Yep.
They don't want, they classify, they can fit in the category of the Superfund, but they don't want to do it. They don't want to ruin their tourism.
And their real estate sales.
And the real estate sales.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of sites here in the council in Hudson Valley that qualify for Superfund, but they don't want to declare it.
like the Dyna Noble site.
Yeah. They don't want to declare it. Years ago, they were quick to declare. Now, they don't want to. And people don't know about it. They don't know that the town over is a Superfund site. So don't live downwind. Sorry.
My marina was declared a Superfund site. The neighbors wanted to hang me. They all wanted to kill me,
I didn't
shoot
catch
me.
what you said. Could you start it over again?
I started a Clean Water Act lawsuit, Citizens Clean Water Act lawsuit. My site was deemed a Superfund site.
Oh, you mean your home?
I owned a marina, which I lived at,
Oh, I see.
and it was deemed a Superfund site. Of course, they told me it was, that it was clean, everything was fine. First of all, you have to do your own tests. You can't rely on DEC or anybody else because they lie. DEC was doing my lawsuit, the control of the DEC, who had control of all the money, was the CEO of Con Edison. So he wasn't going to investigate his own site. So you have to do your own tests. You really can't take anybody's word for anything, because after they promised me that it was perfectly hunky-dory clean, you could drink the water, I did my own tests. And they came up off the chart. Off the chart. Right. Over 5,000 parts per million PCB. The eels from my property were the most contaminated eels in New York State from PCBs. And they were the favorite food of Lou Gehrig. And we know what happened to Lou Gehrig.
Where was your property?
In New Rochelle.
Oh, New Rochelle. Oh, okay.
Can I ask this gentleman to explain, if it's limestone, it's usually non-acid, right?
Pardon?
Limestone is usually more alkaline, so could you explain that?
Okay, where the site, the Onteora site is, it's an acidic, you have a bluestone, which is a sandstone, which is not really, it's not an alkaline, it's more of an acidic geology. So any washout, concrete washout that's going into the frayed mayor is going to be accentuated by the fact that it's a bluestone, a gray wacky, rather than if it was a limestone, which would buffer it. So that's a crucial factor you have to remember that. It'll actually make it worse. It'll make the pH rise.
Manna, it's like Minnewaska. It's like Minnewaska, Lake Minnewaska.
Yeah.
There are no fish in there because it's acidic. And the whole area is limestone.
It's an oligotropic lake. It's basically a pool-producing lake. There are classifications of lakes according to fishery science, which I studied at Kovalsky. And basically, you have the classification of the lake will determine the productivity of the lake based on the geology, the inflow and the outflow of the water, the pH, the DO, soft salts. All of this are all measured by DEC. And if you don't have, if the buffering is not there, there's going to be a problem. On the cement washout, there's no buffering where that site is, so the streams are going to be more adversely affected.
Thank you.
I said it again here now. If you get any of that water in your eye, you know about it.
Yep. Well, 13.65 in Drano in terms of...
Well, you all have an opportunity to be the first using the world criteria of all the mess that's out there and taking action based on that in your own backyard. And that would be a tremendous thing to do. And that means DEC and the department like it in Pennsylvania and all over the place should be changing. We're talking about the need for a national change. And you can bet that the federal government is going to change soon in what they are doing in the environment. Right now it's very negative, but that I don't think is going to hold up over the coming years.
Well, then it's going to open up pond bar. That's terrible.
Open up what?
Opening up pond bar for oil and drilling interests.
Well, up in the Arctic, they're talking about doing that. There's going to be tremendous opposition to that.
I hope so.
and there'll be a lot of testimony against it. There'll be some of the biggest environmental organizations in the country will be out there battling on that.
What do you project the town of Kingston is going to do with the seeker?
What do I think what will do?
What do you project that the cement company will do with this seeker that they're going to?
Well, I think they'll talk about all the wonderful things that they'll contribute. And be careful about them contributing to the nearby towns and cities. Very often the company will say, we'll build a new firehouse for you. We'll put in some new playgrounds. They'll do publicly beneficial things. So you have to be ready to counter that. And I assume that they will try something like that.
They've already done a lot of public relations on how much they're considering the environment in this project, which are pretty false.
Yeah, and they always do that.
Yeah.
And the department goes through it says all the papers are in order, and now we okay the permit, and we protected the environment, and we have some monitoring to make sure that that's the case. Often hogwash. Often pure politics.
People believe it, though. A lot of people believe the publicity that they...
Well, they do, but you should believe it less right now after you see what has happened on a worldwide basis. We only had 2 kids in the audience today. I was hoping we were going to have many. But it was nice that we had those 2. I have no idea what they thought when they left, but they are so important as to what they think. And what I saw they were thinking yesterday, they wanted to have a good earth with birds on. Very often, if you have fish and you have healthy birds and healthy wildlife on a place, like Onteora Lake or Pickerel Pond, that means probably that it's a good place for people. It's healthy enough to have healthy wildlife. That in itself is something in it that indicates that there's probably something there that is good for life in general. But you need to follow that up with some data.
I can't figure out why the Catskills, I can't find one preserve in the Catskills. I haven't found one preserve yet. They're all, they do anything but preserve. They allow bikes, they allow dogs, the wildlife is going kaput, the birds are being kaput because, we have ground nesting birds that migrate up and migrate back down. And in Massachusetts, for example, they have preserves. They have concern for the biodiversity, for the plants, for the animals. They'll tell you, you're not going to picnic here. Leave your pets at home because of what they do to the preserve. And the preserve is there for the wildlife and the wildflowers. But I haven't found that here in the Catskills.
Well, there's some of that. They may be, but we need this on a national basis. We need all the people involved in taking care of the environment. Yes.
We need a consciousness.
Yep. When we hoped with conservation education we would get more of that. Well, let's see about if we can't get that. Let's stay in touch. Yep. You what?
You're getting tired.
And thank you, Henny and David, for making this possible.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Henny, for making this possible. Thank you, Henny, and thank you, David.
Well, I think the last thing I want to say is it's encouraging to see so many people wanting to protect that Onteora area. And certainly the blasting and the downing of water, drainage, and the noise. The birds will not exactly like the noise either. But the changes in the water table going down, all those things will make a difference. Plus it may be that toxic substances will be coming off that site and going into Esopus Creek and into the stream there and into the pond, and they haven't got even a basic bit of data to show what has happened there in the past. They don't know what is there. And before they can talk about the threat from the toxic substances, then they've got to know what the devil it is that's going to be going out of there. And things are kind of up in the air right now with those torrential downpours. The reason why I told you the story of the turkeys was the turkeys were being hit by the rainfall. They are being hit.
How so?
We're not talking about that much.
How so? How are they being affected?
Well, because they are ground nesting birds.
I see, okay.
The turkeys and the grouse nest on the ground.
Yep.
And these torrential downpours soak the eggs in some cases, and they wet them so that they don't hatch out normally. And if they do hatch, they go underneath their mother, and their mother leads them off to get some food, mostly after things like insects, not much in the line of grain. And they go off, and down comes a downpour. Or a little fluffy chick walking through grass that's wet, and they get wet. Their plumage is wet, and they become quickly cold.
Yes,
Chicks become quickly hypothermic,
yeah.
and down they go. And that's what's happening to our turkeys and our grouse. Now, what will happen in the long run? I'm not exactly sure, but it does not look good.
I noticed that this
we're not going to have extinction of the turkey or the grouse, but from the point of view of going out and hunting them and seeing them, we're going to have very few.
Well, is a turkey count coming up? I don't know, maybe it's over now, I can't remember.
Well, I heard an announcement by DEC, they were going to do a survey.
All right, yeah.
I mean, why do we need a survey? We need to take some action and find out what these torrential downpours are doing. We already had the knowledge within DEC about this.
I want to say something about Onteora Lake, because it is such a small lake that people consider that it's insignificant. And that we also, I think, are kowtowing to this little tiny town that happens to have the so-called ownership of it. And I think it needs to be expanded into a much bigger area that's going to be involved in it and also have control over it. Because this is actually the miner's canary for the Hudson River Valley. Everybody who wants to pollute and make trouble is watching us because we're making a fair swap. And they're saying to themselves, if we can manage to keep Onteora Lake away from being saved, then we can proceed to do nasty things other ways. And if at the same point, if we can save Onteora Lake, they understand that they're going to be next if they try to do something nasty. So actually, we're a much bigger thing
I agree.
than two small lakes. We are basically the miner's canary for the Catskill area, and perhaps even farther, because we've made enough noise that people are aware that we're here. And they're going to wonder whether we win or lose. And if we lose, we're going to lose a whole lot more than Onteora Lake.
I agree with that.
Well, it'll be like a gateway. It'll be like a gateway drug, like marijuana. It'll be like a gateway industry.
Well, there need to be more protections by law of the Catskills, just like
As you know how well laws are, ask
Yeah.
any Native American.
I know.
Yeah, right. You know, I noticed this summer, I was driving, I remember years ago, I'd drive in the summer and those goddamn, insects all over your windshield. Man, they stick and you gotta clean them off.
Not anymore.
Oh, wow.
Not anymore.
There's none anymore.
Well, there's been
None. I drove to
I
Detroit
think I had
for
two
Christ's
all
sake,
summer.
and I didn't have to clean the windshield.
That's a major
Detroit,
source of the
all the way through Pennsylvania with all those
Very
woods.
scary.
That's why the
It's
grassland bird
frightening.
species have declined so precipitously. The food is not there anymore for them. 31% decrease in the insect species in the last 50 years. That's been documented. And it's becoming more of a problem because of the pesticides and the herbicides and everything else. But you also have to remember is that climate change is affecting what's called the schedule of actual breeding. So what's happening now is you're getting an extended period of breeding. You're getting very little mortality, so the composition of the insect species is changing as a result. So the birds are eating the insects that they used to eat are not there anymore.
Right.
So you're not going to have as many dragonflies. You're not going to have as many beetles. You're not going to have as many other species that they used to eat.
Yeah,
So the population drops. So there's a chain cause and effect because of the change in the species composition of insects because of climate change. This is all tied in. It's across the board.
Yeah.
It's across the board.
Well, there's one other thing that nobody has addressed yet at all, and this is the electronic problem. The 5G, this kind of radiation pulsation that we're seemingly bringing in many different ways, in many different forms. There's going to be a talk that's going to be happening up at Columbia Green in 2 weeks about the possibility that we should use fiber optics rather than 5G. And there was a place in Holland where they did have the 5G, and it was noted, and it was on the internet the other day, that wherever it was, there were no insects, and especially the pollinators. They couldn't handle it. And so, as we're talking climate change, and we're talking pollution, we also have to talk electronic pollution, because the little critters seem to get that first before we do, in terms of what happens.
So they're working on 6G now.
No, the automatic cars would be 9. The point is, we're adding to it enough that we're polluting the air in other ways besides what's in it in particles. It's also in it electronically. And we're basically just ravaging the earth. And this little tiny little unknown little bit of a pristine pond, incidentally, I do speak to Peter Sider-Vavor almost weekly, but he's not going to be able to do anything much for us. He's pretty much out of it now, but he said it's one of the few pristine environments around here that's like ponds were 50 years ago. And so it has a value, if nothing else.
But you have to remember also 50 years ago they had a trailer right at that lake, dumping their sewage in there.
Well, maybe 50, maybe 60, maybe 40. I mean, just said this is an old
I think we should make a little manifesto and call it the last gasp.
We are. We're the front row seats to the end of the world.
Any more questions for Ward?
If I could just reiterate again about phytoplankton. It's the most important organism on this planet. Every second breath you take because of phytoplankton. It creates most of our oxygen. It is the beginning of the food supply of the oceans. It's taken it billions of years to create all this. It's half gone in my lifetime. Half gone. That is the biggest problem facing the planet. I mean, we could all get involved with local issues and all these other. There's a power plant going in near me, and there's a group of people here and a group of people there. But we're going to die of hunger. I mean, our kids are going to experience hunger like you can't imagine because of what's happening to phytoplankton. We're going to be fighting in the streets over food.
It's going to be like Soylent Green.
Soylent Green, yeah. So that's the issue I think really needs to be addressed.
All right, one last question for Ward. Ward, I think it was you who led a talk in Woodstock maybe about 10 years ago.
Yes.
And the question came up about chemtrails. And you asked, what do you know about chemtrails? Would you like, now I think we know that it's a fact and that, all kinds of chemicals are raining down on us. Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, first I'd like to comment on what I think the most important species is. And it's not the species of phytoplankton. The most important species I think that we have is us. Human beings. It is us that have the ability to change the world, the direction it's going. Phytoplankton does not have that. Foxes don't have that. The caribou doesn't have that. It is us, the human beings, the Homo sapiens. We can change things and we can save ourselves and other species and make it a better world. Now is the moment to do that. And you guys are starting that with your Onteora kind of battle right here. And if we have lots and lots of people doing that sort of thing, it'll start making it a better world.
Well, when we win the battle, we should start as an outgrowth is put together an environmental education center at Onteora Lake so that we can continue the process of education of the public regarding the threats to the environment. That would be the step number 2.
Good
after
luck.
we save Onteora Lake.
Any more questions for Ward?
And you can make the health department so. Well, certainly the chemtrails.
How do we get in touch with you?
You can call me about any
We'll
time.
give you that information, Tony. Yeah, we'll give you that information.
And my number is area code 518.
Are you on Facebook?
Okay, 518.
518, 505.
505.
Yep.
Yeah, and should be a four-number thing after that.
There should be. 6748.
6748.
Could you repeat that? It's 518.
505, 6748. Yes.
Thank you. I'm not from Kingston. I'm from Orange County. An activist for many years in Orange County. Still day to day. My name is Frank Harlow, by the way. I'm good friend of Dr. Warnick, and I know many, Frank Mancuso, I know many other people here, but from everything that I'm hearing here, just this small group of people here, I think you have to think unconventional. Everything I hear that you're saying is conventional, and to me it sounds like a lot of motherhood stuff that makes you feel good, but it doesn't do any good. You have to make a list of all the elected officials that you pay to protect you, that are not doing the job, by the way, even the DEC. A side note is, I met a guy I never knew him before. He retired from one of the regions, I won't say which one. He was at a meeting I was at, similar to this week. He said, I just retired. He says, people there at the office he was from were doing nothing. This came from somebody who just retired. So what you do, take a list of every elected official that's responsible for this spot. From the lowest form of government, every person responsible that has a stake in this, to the highest one. And plan, and you have to do good planning, and this is easy to do, what I'm about to tell you. Go to where they live, or go to their office, and stay there as long as you can, every day, or every week, or on a regular basis. Keep track of when you go there. You only need a half a dozen people, or more. I don't know how big your organization is, or how much grassroots support you have. You have to get in their face. You're being too. Everything I'm hearing is kindness. So forth. You want to do things conventionally, but there's people that are not going to help you. They're going to beat you. If you get to court, you're going to pay money for an attorney. They're going to beat you. It's done all the time. They don't care what the court says. They're paying money. It happened in Orange County at the frack gas power plant. There was money right under the governor's nose. His brother, not his real brother, but the guy the family considered brother, was getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. His wife got a so-called